السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. So Alhamdulillah, in the last lesson we completed the discussion on Kitabullah, and now we are beginning the discussion of Sunnah. Okay. Generally we use the word Hadith, Khabar, Athar, but in Usool, the Usooliyin use Sunnah because it is more inclusive. So Mufti Sayyid Sahab has defined Sunnah here as Sunnah lughatan at-tariqah. Literally, the word Sunnah means tariqah, a way, a path. وسنة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما ينسب إليه من قول أو فعل أو تقرير. And the Sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is anything which is attributed to himself, be it verbal or an action or a taqreer, you could say an approval, a tacit approval, where something happened in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he did not object to it. So this is a taqreer. Like in the previous chapter in Bayan al-Hal, we indicated towards that the condition is a bayan, that's taqreer. والمراد بالسنة ها هنا ما هو شامل للأقوال الصحابة وأفعالهم أيضا. The meaning of, or the intended meaning of sunnah over here includes the sayings and actions of the Sahaba as well. Okay. This last part is one opinion which has been chosen by Mufti Saeed Saab. Not all the Usool Kitabs agree with this. There's a long discussion on whether a fi'l al-sahabi is hujjah or not. Okay. Also, from the taqreer of Mufti Saeed Saab, we can learn that his explanation of the difference between a sunnah and hadith is that not every sunnah is hadith and not every hadith is sunnah. Why is this? He says because hadith could be ma'mul biha and ghair ma'mul biha. Okay, a mansukh hadith is still hadith, but it's not sunnah. Right? So if a hadith is mansukh, for example, Rasulullah has prohibited visiting graves. So that is a hadith, but it's not a sunnah because it's ghair ma'mul biha, it's mansukh. So therefore, in that sense, hadith are more inclusive because they include both mansukh, ghair mansukh. And sunnah only includes ghair mansukh and ma'mul biha, so it's less inclusive. But on the other hand, Mufti Saeed Saab says the aqwal and af'al of Sahaba are included in Sunnah, whereas af'al and aqwal of Sahaba are not included in Hadith. So in that sense, Sunnah is more inclusive. Wallahu a'lam. والأقسام العشرون التي سبق ذكرها في بحث كتاب الله تعالى ثابتة في السنة أيضا، وهذا الباب لبيان ما تختص به السنن. I'm sharing my screen. I don't understand why it's not showing. Just give me a moment. So, والأقسام العشرون التي ذكرها في بحث كتاب الله تعالى ثابتة في السنة أيضا، وهذا الباب لبيان ما تختص به السنن. The 20 types of words that we learned about in Kitabullah. So you have khas, am, mushtarak, muawwal, etc., etc. So everything we learned about those in Kitabullah, the same rulings will apply to hadith as well. Okay? Because just as the Quran is in Arabic, the hadith are also in the Arabic language. So the same rules of language will apply, and the ways of usage and the same rules of logic and reasoning will apply. So there's no need to repeat all that here. You could say that the previous chapter applied to both Quran and Sunnah. It wasn't exclusively for Quran. That's why many of the examples were actually from the Sunnah. Okay. So وهذا الباب, this chapter is to explain ما تختص به السنن, matters which are specific to Sunnah. There are some issues which are unique to the discussion of Sunnah. Okay? Because the Quran is mutawatir, it's qat'i, that is the word of Allah. There is no doubt regarding even one ayah or one word or one letter of the Quran that it is not wahi. Everything we have in the Mus'haf today is a wahi, and it was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Allah Ta'ala. Therefore, it's the word of Allah, and we have no question or no doubt over this. However, when it comes to Sunnah, then of course there is the question of how sahih and how authentic is it, um, and is it mutawatir or not? Is it qat'i or not? Also, there may be some riwayat fil ma'na. Sometimes some Sahaba and Tabi'een or Ruwat would narrate just the meaning of the hadith in their own words, the paraphrase. With Quran, this has not happened. So because of this, there are some new issues, different issues, which are exclusive to Sunnah, and they will be discussed in this chapter. وَاعْلَمْ أن خبر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بمنزلة الكتاب في حق لزوم العلم والعمل به فإن من أطاعه فقد أطاع الله إلا أن الشبهة في باب الخبر في ثبوته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم واتصال به. So this is what I just explained. And you should know that the khabar, meaning the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, holds the same status as the Quran in terms of the necessity of knowledge, meaning belief, and practice upon it. Because whoever obeys Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has indeed obeyed Allah. So if you want to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you must obey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can't say that I'll do what Allah says, but I won't do what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Billah, like some people nowadays who call themselves Ahlul Quran say. Because if you disobey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you are in fact disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Illa anna shubhata. So therefore the status of a statement of the Quran and the status of a statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in itself, both are the same. They are both wahi. Okay, as far as the Sahaba were concerned, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave them a command, or if a command came in the Quran, it was wajib and necessary for them to act upon them both. If anybody rejected them without reason, then they would be considered a kafir, because you rejected and you refused to accept the hukam of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's just like refusing Allah to accept Allah's hukam. Okay? So the hukam, the ruling of a statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly is the same as a statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إلا أن الشبهة في باب الخبر في ثبوته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم واتصال به, except that the doubt in the issue of, in the discussion of hadith, is only to its being established from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and being connected to him. Is it actually his statement? Is it muttasil? Do we have a chain of narration, or is there some kind of inqita', some narrative missing in there? So because of this, we have to discuss Sunnah in more detail. So أقسام السنة باعتبار كيفية الاتصال بنا, the different types of Sunnah in relation to how they have reached us, how they are joined to us. فالسنة باعتبار كيفية الاتصال بنا من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على ثلاثة أقسام: المتواتر والمشهور وخبر الواحد. That in terms of the way they are joined to us, Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are of three types: mutawatir, mashhur, and khabarul wahid. Okay. And let's summarize before we read the text that mutawatir is such a hadith which has reached us from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with so many sources and so many individuals in each stage or each level of the chain, that it is not comprehensible, it is not believable that all those people could be lying. Okay, and some ulama have tried to specify this with a number, and there are many opinions in what that number could be, but The correct opinion is that it can't be specified by a number. This is something that the ulama and the mujtahidun can identify. Is it mutawatir or not? So we don't specify it with a number. We just say that it has to be such a large amount that it's just not logically believable that these people could have, had a meeting and got together and decided, let's make up this lie and let's spread this information. Okay? Then, if it's not mutawatir, then it's the opposite of that would be khabar wahid. Khabar wahid is any hadith which does not reach the level of mutawatir. Okay? Even though we call it khabar wahid, this is also a type of majaz, you could say, that if it's 2 or 3 or 4 narrators, even if it's 5 narrators or 10 narrators, if it does not reach the level of tawatur, then it is khabar wahid. Okay? So don't be tricked by the name. Even though wahid means one, so khabar wahid means information relayed by one person, but even if it's a small number of people, it's still khabar wahid unless it reaches the level of mutawatir. Then comes the question that what's mashhur in between. So mashhur is a hadith which started off as a khabar wahid. Okay, in the time of Sahaba and Tabi'in, maybe it was not so widespread. But then later, in the later generations, within the first 3 generations, at some point, it became very well known and accepted and famous, and all the mujtahideen and the imma, the scholars of hadith, scholars of fiqh, they all accepted it. So the fact that they have accepted it means it must have some credibility. It can't be made up. They wouldn't be duped and fooled so easily. So that gets the status of mashhur. And then there is some differences within the hukam which we'll read in the kitab. So al-mutawatiru huwa ma rawahu qawmun la yuhsa adaduhum. Mutawatir is such a narration which has been narrated by such people whose numbers cannot be counted. There are too many to count. You can't even, meaning a large number. This is a bit of balagha here. La yuhsa adaduhum is not literal. It means that a very large number. ولا يتوهم توافقهم على الكذب. And it is inconceivable for them all to agree on a lie. Okay, it's inconceivable. It can't be imagined that all these people would get together and make up a lie. كنقل القرآن والصلوات الخمس, like the transmitting of the Quran and the 5 salahs. Okay, so from day one, from the time of the Sahaba, we have known that there are 5 salahs in the day, even though the 5 salahs are not mentioned in one place in the Quran. But from the time of the Sahaba till now, the Ummah has always prayed 5 salah. This is mutawatir. It's impossible to say that, initially the salahs were only 3 and then Sahaba added 2 afterwards. Because, the riwayat are so famous. Also, the Quran is mutawatir. حكمه يوجب علم اليقين كالعيان علما ضروريا ويكون رده كفرا. The ruling is that it necessitates a knowledge with certainty, as if one has seen with his own eyes. Okay, meaning that there can be no doubt in there. Ilman zaruriya, necessary knowledge, meaning it's absolutely necessary. You can't deny it because it's impossible to deny. How can you deny something which you see with your own eyes? Okay, if it's daytime, the sun is out, and everybody can see it, and one person says no, it's nighttime. So you say, how can it be nighttime? You can see the daylight. So in the same way, this mutawatir is so clear that it doesn't make sense to deny it. وَيَكُونُ رَدُّهُ كُفْرًا. And to deny a mutawatir becomes kufr. Okay, for example, the 5 salahs. If a person doesn't pray his 5 times salah, he's considered a fasiq, a sinner, but not a kafir, according to most aims. But if a person rejects the salah, if he says, I don't believe there should be 5 salah, or I don't accept the 5 salah, I don't think it's reasonable, why should I put my head on the ground? Why should I bow down? This is kufr now, because you have uh, refused to accept a mutawatir. So this is kufr. Number 2, al-mashhur huwa ma kana min al-ahadi fi al-asli. Mashhur is that hadith which was originally from the ahad. Ahad is jama' of wahid, meaning khabar wahid. ثم انتشر في القرن الثاني, then it spread in the second generation. حتى, and according to other books of Usool, it could be in the third generation as well. حتى نقله قوم لا يتوهم توافقهم على الكذب, until such a large number of people transmitted it that it is inconceivable for them to agree upon falsehood. In other words, it reached the status of mutawatir in the second or third generations. وَتَلَقَّتْهُ الْأُمَّةُ بِالْقَبُولِ, and the ummah accepted it one generation to another. Okay? They all met each other by accepting it, meaning each generation accepted it from the former one. كحديث المسح على الخفين, like the hadith of المسح على الخفين. حكمه يوجب علم طمأنينة ويكون رده بدعة. The ruling is it gives satisfactory knowledge. Okay, so it's not like mutawatir where it's ilm al-yaqeen. In ilm al-yaqeen, there's no room for doubt. With regards to mashhur, we are satisfied that this instruction is from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This information is from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is a small possibility based on logic that because in the initial stages there was less than so many narrators of hadith tawatur, so maybe this may be some Sahaba were mistaken, or it's logically conceivable, even though our Sharia, according to our Sharia, as-Sahaba kulluhum adul, that all the Sahaba are adil, and it's not possible that the Sahaba could lie. But still, from a logical point of view, it's conceivable. Therefore, we can't say with 100% yaqeen that mashhur is the statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, we can say there's a 0.0001% doubt there, very small doubt. Okay, so وَيَكُونُ رَدُّهُ بِدْعَةً, and to refuse it would be bid'ah. Over here, there's a point here which I think is mentioned in this hashia. This copy that I'm using today is the hashia of Allamatul Kumani rahmatullah alayh. So in there he mentions that al-azhar anna hadith al-masih al-khuffayn mutawatir, that most fuqaha believe that masih al-khuffayn is in fact mutawatir. This is what Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh said, that I didn't take the opinion of masah al-khuffayn, masah on leather socks, hatta adha'at lika shams, mithla shams, that it was as clear as day or clear as the sun. So Mufti Sayyid has mentioned it as mashhur, but other fuqaha mentioned masah al-khuffayn as mutawatir. Allahu a'lam. So to refuse a mashhur would be bid'ah. If someone refuses a mashhur hadith without any valid reason, without any good reason, without any ijtihad, just for the sake of it, then they will be considered mubtadi', and they will be considered sinful, but not kafir. And thirdly, we have khabar al-wahid, وما يروي الواحد أو الإثنان فصاعدا كأكثر الأحاديث ولا عبرة للعدد إذا لم تبلغ حد الشهرة. So khabar al-wahid is a narration which one or two or more narrate. Like most ahadith are khabar wahid. Okay, we have a discussion sometimes that does Imam Bukhari accept khabar wahid or not. So ulama say that the first hadith in Bukhari, Sahih al-Bukhari, is khabar wahid. إنما الأعمال بالنيات is khabar wahid, because from the Sahaba only Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab narrated it. and then from him Alqama, and then it became mashhur. So if only one or two narrators narrate it, this khabar wahid, and most ahadith are not mutawatir. Most ahadith fall under the scope of either khabar wahid or mashhur. ولا عبرة للعدد إذا لم تبلغ حد الشهرة. There is no consideration for the numbers as long as they do not reach the limit or the limit of being mashhur, meaning hadd tawatur. If they don't get to the, because hadd tawatur has mashhur the same thing. If they don't get to the level of mashhur, then they are considered as khabar wahid. And hukmuhu yujimu al-amal duna ilm al-yaqeen. It is necessary to act upon it. If we have an instruction from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and only one person is narrating in each chain, but each of them is a trustworthy, reliable person, then we must accept it. However, ilmul yaqeen and ilmul tuma'nina is not there. Therefore, there is some possibility that this could be a mistake from the narrator, or there could be some sort of fabrication involved. But despite that, we still have to act upon it unless we can prove that most probably it is fabricated, or most probably it is very weak, or there is some reason to not act upon it. Okay, so therefore, in summary, the three types of hadith are mutawatir, mashhur, and khabar wahid. Mutawatir, such large numbers, they can't be lying. Mashhur, initially there were small numbers, but then it became very famous in the first few generations. So we think, hang on, if it got so famous in the first few generations, there must be something to it. Therefore, it becomes stronger. And khabar wahid, where those numbers remain small in the first three generations. After that, if we take after that, every hadith became mashhur. Okay, because whether Sihah Sitta are written, or even before that, the narration of hadith became so widespread that most of the hadiths that we have reached the had of shuhra later. For now, every hadith is mashhur because they're all published in books and they're all over the world. But it doesn't matter, it's those first three generations that count. Then shurut al-rabi. Okay, so of course with a hadith you have narrators, who the hadith comes to us from. When it comes to Quran, we don't really look at narrators. Okay, some people, some Qurra do have their sanad, and they have the ijazah which goes back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is a very blessed thing to have if we can achieve it, but it's not needed. Okay, because we already know the Quran is the word of Allah. There is no doubt for it. So the sanad is there more for the barakah and the blessing, not there for any other purpose. However, when it comes to a hadith, we need to know what the chain of narration is, and therefore the chain of narration consists of ruwat, narrators. So we need to have information about those narrators. So ويكون الخبر حجة بشرائط في الراوي وهي أربعة. A hadith can be a hujjah when there are some conditions found in the narrator, which are four. Number one, al-aql. Aql, intellect, intelligence is necessary. Therefore, the hadith of a majnoon cannot be accepted. If somebody is known to be mentally incapacitated, okay, he's mentally disabled, then how can the hadith be accepted? وهو نور يدرك به ما لا يدركه الحواس. This is the classical definition of aql. Okay, scientifically we might nowadays define it differently. What is reasoning? What is the ability to reason? Okay, so we can look into that. But Mufti Sayyid has taken the classic definition: هو نور يدرك به ما لا يدركه الحواس. That aql is a light through which such things can be intercepted. Is that the right word? Okay, or acquired, understood. Simple translation. Okay, some things can be acquired or understood, which cannot be understood by the senses. Okay, so for example, if I put something spicy on my tongue, or something sweet on my tongue, I can taste it. That's hawas. If I hear a sound, I can hear it. Okay, if there's some light, I can see it. If something touches, I can touch it. But this is all available even to animals. Animals have those senses. But this aql and reasoning, okay, is very, very limited within animals. Humans have that aql where we can say, if this happens, this will happen. If that happened, this happened because of this. So this reasoning is free from the from the five senses. والشرط الكامل منه وهو عقل بالغ. Sorry. Okay. والشرط is مبتدا الكامل منه is خبر. The shart is that it should be complete aql. So aql can't be naqis. What does that mean? وهو عقل البالغ. That is the aql and intelligence of a mature person. In other words, if uh, so if you have a child who is not majnoon, he has aql, but his aql is still naqis. Why is it naqis? Because due to lack of maturity. So aql only becomes kamil with bulugh. Therefore, the condition is that the aql should be kamil. He should be kamil in his aql. Therefore, he should be baligh. Therefore, we accept a hadith from mature people. We don't take riwayat from sabi. Okay. There is some discussion here of if the tahammul is in sabah. For example, you say if a child saw something or heard something in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or if a young child heard a hadith and he wrote it down, he memorized it, and then once he's mature, once he's valid, he narrates that. Is that then that's valid? Because the consideration is for at the time of delivering, not at the time of witnessing or taking. Okay. Therefore, many Sahaba, when they were children, they saw things. The Nu'man Bashir, maybe even Abdullah Abbas, maybe these Sahaba were very young, and they witnessed certain things. But then, when they became mature, then they narrated their memories. They are valid. Number two, al-dhabt. Dhabt means the ability to preserve, to the ability to, what can you say, hifz, the ability to record is in a scrupulous manner, okay, in a proper manner. So this could be from memory, or this could be by writing down. But as long as they have this ability of taking down what they have heard or what they have seen, and then to be able to convey it accurately, that is dhabt. Okay? So وهو سماع الكلام حق السماع وفهمه بمعناه الذي أريد به وحفظه والثبات عليه ومراقبته بمذاكرته. The meaning of dhabt is to be able to listen to the speech in a proper manner and to be able to understand it in the intended meaning, and then to be able to remember it and to be steadfast upon it. It means to be firm upon it. So once you remember it, you keep it, you remember it in a firm manner. وَمُرَاقَبَتَهُ بِمُذَاكَرَتِهِ. And to be able to safeguard it by remembering it, or by discussing it with each other, okay, or recalling it from memory. You can say to be able to safeguard it by recalling it again and again from memory. Okay, so if somebody heard the hadith and then for 10-15 years they didn't even narrate the hadith, and then they narrate it, there's a good chance they'll be mistaken. So the muhaddithin, they would, once they learned the hadith with their fellows, with their contemporaries, and then with their students, they would keep going over the same hadith to make sure that they don't forget. Okay, so like I mentioned before, dhabt can be from memory, that can be by writing. As long as you're able to take the hadith and convey it accurately, then you are dhabit. Number three is al-adala. Okay, so in everything we have competence and integrity. Like Yusuf alayhi salam said, وَإِنِّي عَلَيْهِ لَقَوِيٌّ أَمِينٌ. Qawi was his competence, and Amin was his integrity, that I'm able to do the job and I will do it in a trustworthy manner. Sometimes you have a person who's very competent, who's very intelligent, who's very skilled, but you can't trust him. So why would you employ somebody like that? On the other hand, you may have somebody who's very trustworthy, very sharif, very pious, okay, and very honest, but he's incompetent, he can't do the job. So again, why would you want somebody like that to do the job for you? So you need both of these things. So dhabt is the competence. They're able to preserve and convey the hadith. And adala is in relation to integrity, because this is a matter of deen. This is a matter of teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, the person who's relating it must be trustworthy. Otherwise, what if they lie? And some people would make up lies. Some people would fabricate a hadith, okay? Sometimes to serve their own motives. They had certain beliefs, certain ideas, and they wanted to spread those ideas. So they would, if you make up a hadith supporting it, then there's more chance of people accepting your idea. So therefore, adala is a very important part of narration of hadith. وهي الاستقامة في الدين. Adala is steadfastness, okay, to be upright, to be steadfast on religion. والمعتبر كمالها. And the adalat which is considered is complete adalat. What does that mean? حتى إذا ارتكب كبيرة أو أصر على صغيرة سقطت عدالته. That if a person carries out a major sin, or he is insistent upon a minor sin, then his adala and his uprightness is removed or is void. Okay, he's no longer adil. So Allah Kumani explains this a little bit further, that adala is of two types, qasira and kamila. Anybody who is Muslim has a adalat qasira. The fact that a person is Muslim means he has to be adil and fair and upright in some manner. However, kamila is rujharu jihati. A person's deen, his commitment to deen, commitment to Islam should be above his desires. وهذه عدالة الكاملة هو الشرط في الراوي. This عدالة الكاملة is what is needed. وذكر المحققون أن حاصل معنى العدالة يرجع إلى ثلاث أمور: ترك الكبائر، ترك الإصرار على الصغائر، ترك الإصرار بما يخل بالمروءة. So he's added one thing here. Mufti Sayyid have only mentioned that to be adil, a person must stay away from major sins and must not insist and not have a habit of minor sins. Sometimes if a minor sin occurs, then that will not make the person's adalah sahih. But if he's insistent and is persistent upon them, then the adalah is sahih. And the third thing mentioned in the hashiyah is al-muruwa. Muruwa means common decency. This is why, the muhaddith mentioned things like if a person eats standing in public, he eats in public. This also is mukhil in muruwa. It's not considered very decent. Okay, if a person urinates standing up in a public place, okay, even though if his satar is covered, technically it's not haram, but still it's khilaf al-muruwa. It's not decent. So if a person does these indecent things, even though they're not a sin, but that will affect his riwayah. Number 4 is al-Islam. وهو التصديق والإقرار بالله تعالى, to believe and acknowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the 4 conditions that every narrator must have. Every narrator must, number 1, be sane. Number 2, be scrupulous and able and competent. Number 3, must be trustworthy and fair. And number 4, they must be a Muslim. Because these are matters of religion, so we won't accept matters of our religion from followers of other religions. Again, the religion, just like aql, is a shart at the time of conveying. Okay, so somebody like Abu Sufyan may have witnessed many things before he became Muslim, like at the occasion of Hudaybiyah. When he became Muslim at Fatih Makkah, if he narrates them after that, then that can be accepted as a hadith. Because at the time of conveyance, he is a Muslim. فلا يقبل خبر الصبي والمعتوه. Therefore, the hadith of a child will not be accepted because of the reason we mentioned. that the child is aql is qasir and naqis, is not kamil. والمعتوه and the insane, because aql is necessary. والذي اشتدت غفلته, and who's somebody who is extremely careless. Okay, ghafla, to be careless, to be negligent. So if he's careless and negligent, that means he's not dhabit. Right? He makes a lot of mistakes. You had some narration like this. They were very fair people, very pious people even. They would never deliberately lie. But they used to mix things up. They mix one hadith up with another hadith. Okay, and they mix one story up with another story. So this takes away the dhabt. And the muhaddithi would pick up on this and they would say this person is not zabid. We won't accept this hadith. والفاسق والكافر. And the hadith of a fasiq cannot be accepted because a fasiq is not adil, adalat is not there. Third condition. And al-kafir because the fourth condition of Islam is not there. ويقبل من المرأة والعبد والأعمى في وجود الشرائط. The hadith of a woman and a slave and a blind person can be accepted because the conditions are found. Somebody might think that only men's ahadith should be accepted. No, that's not correct. Narrations of women are accepted. Narrations of slaves can be accepted. And even a blind person's narration is acceptable because they have the four conditions. Okay? Then أقسام الراوي. ثم الراوي في الأصل قسمان معروف بالعلم والاجتهاد كالخلفاء الأربعة والعبادلة رضي الله تعالى عنهم حكمه العمل بروايتهم أولى من العمل بالقياس معروف بالحفظ والعدالة كأبي هريرة وأنس بن مالك حكمه إن وافق حديث القياس يعمل به وإن خالفه لا يترك إلا لضرورة. Now this is a type of taqsim which some Hanafi Usuliyin have made. Like I believe Isa ibn Aban was the first person, if I remember correctly, who came up with this taqsim. But not all the Hanafis, like Imam Karhi, they do not agree with this. So what is the taqsim? The taqsim is that all Sahaba can be split into two categories. There are some Sahaba who are known for their ijtihad and for their fiqh and for their understanding of matters of fiqh. There are other Sahabas who weren't very well known or who weren't very well versed when it came to fiqh and ijtihad. And this is something that ulama have mentioned, that even within the Sahaba, there were only certain Sahaba who would give fatwa. Okay, Ibn Humam, if I remember correctly, mentions only 7 or 10 names of Sahaba who used to give fatwa. Like this Khulafa Arba'a, as Abdullah bin Mas'ud, Mu'adh bin Jabal, Zayd bin Thabit, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, I think, and a few others. So, maybe in every city you would have only 1 or 2 Sahaba who would actually give fatwa, who are mujtahid, considered as mujtahid. And all the others would come to them to resolve their issues. Okay, so not every Sahabi, would look into Quran and Hadith and take rulings. Like some people claim now that every layman, every Tom, Dick, and Harry should open the Quran and Hadith and find rulings in there and act upon them. So even the Sahaba didn't do this. Sahaba used to ask for fatwas. There's many records of this. So some Sahaba, you could say in simple terms, some Sahaba were known to be mujtahid, okay, and experts in fiqh, and others were not. So based on this, the fuqaha have mentioned a distinction between their narrations. Okay? Why should there be a distinction? The reason is because it's well known that the Sahaba would do riwayat bil ma'na. Okay? Meaning they would paraphrase, they would narrate a hadith in their own words. This was common amongst the Sahaba, that Rasulullah would make a statement and then they would convey it in their own words. Many times they would relate it verbatim, exactly as they heard it. Sometimes they would just say Rasulullah said this, and they say it in their own words, how they remember it, or they paraphrase it. Okay? And this is permissible. It's not like it's not allowed. That's why many a times with one hadith you find it's narrated with so many different words. Alright? So hang on, it's one hadith, but why is the wording different? It's because the narrators have narrated it according to their own understanding in their own words. Now, if the Sahabi is a mujtahid and a faqih, then even when he paraphrases, even when he narrates it in his own, according to his own understanding, still it, they won't make any mistake and they will still convey the same meaning which was intended by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because of their fiqh, they won't change the meaning. They may change the words, but they won't change the meaning. On the other hand, that Sahabi who is غير faqih and غير mujtahid, then when he narrates the hadith with riwayat bil ma'na in his own words, there is a possibility that due to his lack of ijtihad and fiqh, they may change the meaning without realizing. Okay, so they might think that this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant, and then they will narrate it accordingly in their own words. When really, there's a subtle difference in the original statement. There was another meaning which was intended, like we learned in the previous chapters, that khas, am, and haqiqat al-majaz and sami'a al-kinaya, that so many times one word can have more than one meaning. So they might understand it to mean one thing, and then they'll narrate it according to their understanding, according to that meaning, when in reality the meaning was something else. So because of this, there is a distinction between the hadith of a faqih and ghair faqih. There's a famous story, you could look it up yourself, of this munazara between Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam al-Awza'i rahimahumullah. That Awza'i said that, why don't you take the opinion of Raf'ul Yadayn when, we narrate from Salim, from Abdullah ibn Umar, that Rasulullah raised his hand. And Imam Hanifa mentioned his sanad, Hamad and Ibrahim and Alqamah and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Awza'i said, I'm giving you 3 narrators, you're giving me 4. Right? So my hadith is closer. But Imam Hanifa said, yes, my hadith might have an additional narrator, an additional link in the chain, but in my chain, every narrator is more faqih than the one in yours. So in matters of fiqh, we should look at which narrator is most faqih. And the narrator whose hadith, the hadith whose narrators are greater fuqaha should be given preference, because they would understand the hadith better for matter of fiqh. So when the discussion is of fiqh, then the narration of fuqaha is stronger. Okay? So because of this, the author says, then narrators are in original or in effect 2 types. Number 1, those who are known for their knowledge and their ijtihad, like the 4 khulafa and the abadila. You can say the abduls. The abduls. So the 4 abdullahs, 3 or 4. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Umar, and some say Abdullah ibn Zubair as well. Radiallahu anhu ajma'in. So these are the abadilah. Okay. حكمه العمل برواية أولى من العمل بالقياس. If you have a narration from fuqaha, then, and on the other hand you have a qiyas, then the khabar wahid of the fuqaha will always be taken over qiyas. Will always be taken over qiyas. Okay, because their riwayat hadith is stronger than qiyas. Okay? The second type, معروف بالحفظ والعدالة. Those who are famous in relation to hifz, memorizing hadith, and adala, best trustworthiness, uprightness, like Abu Huraira and Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu. Okay, we can have a note here with regards to Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. It's not correct to say he was ghair faqih because he used to give fatwa. Sometimes he narrated one hadith and he didn't act upon it. For example, he narrates the hadith of washing the utensil 7 times if a dog drinks from it. But his fatwa was that it only needs to be washed 3 times. So from there, ulama say that he was a faqih and a mujtahid. Um, so it's not correct to say that. Okay? With Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, I'm not 100% sure whether he used to give fatwa or not. But sometimes when he was asked the question, he would say, Salu Maulana Hassan. Who's Maulana Hassan? Hassan Basri, rahmatullahi alayhi. So Hassan Basri was a tabi'i. When Anas radiallahu anhu, being such a senior Sahabi, when he was asked the fatwa, he said, ask Maulana Hassan, ask Hassan Basri, don't ask me. Subhanallah, which is humbleness. So they weren't really known for their fiqh and ijtihad, even though they were huge in virtue, but this was not their field. حكمه إن وافق حديثه القياس يعمل به. If their hadith is in agreement with a qiyas, then it should be practiced upon. وإن خالفه لا يترك إلا للضرورة. If the hadith goes against qiyas, then it should not be left unless there is a necessity. Some Isa bin Abanan. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the opinion of Isa bin Aban and others that if the hadith of a ghair faqih goes against qiyas, then we should prefer qiyas because of the reason I explained earlier, that they may be riwayat bil ma'na, they may have paraphrased without understanding the hadith, and therefore we should take qiyas. Because qiyas is also a shari'i hujjah, okay, which we learned about before. The qiyas isn't just logic. Qiyas is where it's not just our own logic, our own opinion. Qiyas is where you have an established ruling and that ruling can be applied elsewhere. The muhaqqiqeen of the Hanafiya say that the truth is that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi would leave qiyas even for the hadith of a ghair faqih. And many a times the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, even though I'm not saying he's ghair faqih, but according to this argument, if we were to agree and if we were to say, okay, Abu Hurairah was not faqih, then many a times Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi left qiyas for the riwayat of Abu Hurairah. For example, the hadith of qahqaha fi salah. Okay, hadith of if somebody laughs loud in salah, then qiyas says that the wuzu should not break because wuzu breaks when some najasa, some impurity comes out from the body, and there is no impurity here. But still, Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah says wuzu breaks. This is why Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri rahimahullah has written that it is known and established that, and it can be seen that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, if he has a weak hadith in opposition to qiyas, then he will act upon the weak hadith and he will leave the qiyas. Subhanallah. So you see in many places where the other madhahib, where the Shafi'i madhab is acting upon qiyas and the Hanafi madhab is acting on a weak hadith. So we prefer even weak hadith over qiyas. And still, some people accuse us of being Ahlul Raya and Ahlul Qiyas. Khair. So, Allamatul Kumani has a long discussion here. If somebody has this print of the kitab, you can check it. If not, you can acquire it from us. So over here, we've come to a close on the discussion of Sunnah. There are many other matters of Sunnah which are mentioned in books of Usool al-Hadith. Yeah. Like, there's a very good kitab written by Maulana Abdul Azim, who's a Ustad in Saharanpur. I'm forgetting the name of the kitab now. So, Maulana Abdul Azim's book is very good for the usul of hadith according to Hanafiya. Because generally, in our madaris, we teach usul hadith of Shafi'iyya, we teach Nukhbatul Fikr, in Imam Shafi'i's and sorry, Ibn Hajar Asqalani was Shafi'i, and we teach Imam Suyuti's kitabs, uh, Tadrib al-Rawi. But these are usul according to the Shafi'i scholars. But the usul of Hanafiya are a bit different. So Mara Abdul Azim, in his kitab, he has mentioned the usul of uh, hadith according to Hanafiya. So it'd be good to read that book. If I remember the name, I'll mention it, inshallah. البحث الثالث في الإجماع. The third discussion is in relation to ijma'. Ijma' is translated as consensus, okay, or agreement. So Muslim mentions al-ijma'u fi al-lughati al-ittifaq. Literally, ijma' means agreement. وفي الشريعة اتفاق المجتهدين من أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم في عصر على أمر. In Sharia, ijma' is the agreement of the mujtahideen of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam in one time upon one matter. Okay. So we have to break this down. Ittifaqul mujtahideen. This tells us that if a ghair mujtahid has an opinion, that does not affect ijma'. Okay. If a layman, a ghair faqih, ghair alim, ghair mujtahid, even if he's a muhaddith, or even if he has a lot of knowledge of aqidah and kalam, but if he's not mujtahid, if he's not well versed in fiqh, then his opinion will not have any effect on ijma'. Min ummati Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, this ijma' is a khususiyah of this ummah, is a specific trait of this ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Okay, the ummah of Musa alayhi salam did not have this benefit. Otherwise, all the Jews are now agreed on certain things. Does that mean that's correct? Okay, or all the Christians, if they agree that Isa alayhi salam is a son of Allah, or he's Allah, na'udhu, not that they do, but if they did, would that become ijma'? No, because they were not given this guarantee. And the reason for that is because the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is due to last until Qiyamah. Okay? Unlike the other ummahs, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given a guarantee that now, you are like the sun, and when the sun comes, then all stars fade away. So your Shariah is here now. Now, how can another Sharia come after you? Therefore, this Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Quran which was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be preserved and will last until the day of Qiyamah. So now, if in a certain time, if the whole Ummah was to move away from his Sharia, then that means his Sharia didn't last till Qiyamah. Therefore, there will always be somebody from the Ummah who will stand up, no matter how downtrodden and how distraught and how weak the Ummah becomes and how far they become from the truth and from the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will always be some individuals who will stand up and speak the truth and who will guide the Ummah towards the truth, inshallah. Okay? So this is a special feature of this Ummah, that if we can never agree on wrong. This Ummah can never gather on wrong. Because the Ummah cannot gather on wrong, somebody must be right. Therefore, if they all are saying one thing, they have to be right. They can't all be wrong. Fi asrin, in one time. Okay? So at one time, if they all agree, that's ijma'. Ala amr, it has to be on the same matter. It has to be on a certain matter. Ala amr, Alamatul Kumani mentions it has to be amr shar'i, not hukm aqli or hissi. حكم الإجماع. حكمه هو حجة كالحديث. Ijma' is also a hujjah, just like hadith is. لقوله تعالى: ومن يشاقق الرسول من بعد ما تبين له الهدى ويتبع غير سبيل المؤمنين نوله ما تولى ونصله جهنم وساءت مصيرا. In Surah Al-Nisa. that Allah Ta'ala said, وَمَن يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولِ, whoever opposes the messenger after guidance has become clear to him, and follows other than the way of the believers. This is what's significant here. وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That this ayah is telling us that you should not follow any way other than the way of the believers. In other words, if all the mu'mineen are on one path, then you should follow that path. That means that must be the correct path. Then what will happen if we don't do this? Then we will give him what he has taken and drive him into hell, and what an evil destination hell is. So if you don't follow the path of mu'mineen, if you go on a different path than the path of mu'mineen, then Allah Ta'ala is giving a warning here of Jahannam. That means it's necessary to follow the path of the mu'mineen. In the Hashiyah it's mentioned that أول من استدل بهذه الآية هو الإمام الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى. That somebody objected on ijma'. So where's your proof that ijma' is a dalil? Imam Shafi said, give me 3 days. So for 3 days, his student Muzani rahimahullah says no one saw him, and he just contemplated and thought in the Quran, and then after 3 days he came and he recited this ayah, that this ayah is the proof that ijma' is a hujjah. Subhanallah. Thanks to their dedication, we have all the knowledge on a plate ready for us. For 3 days he studied the Quran to get to this conclusion that ijma' is established in the Quran, and we have it in front of us ready. That's why we don't value it. ولقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يجمع الله هذه الأمة على ضلالة. That Allah will not gather this ummah upon misguidance. This hadith is in Surah Tirmidhi, Kitab al-Fitan. That Allah will not gather the ummah on misguidance. Therefore, if the whole ummah is agreed on one matter, then that cannot be wrong, it cannot be misguidance. ولقول مسعود رضي الله عنه, سيدنا عبد الله مسعود رضي الله عنه said, ما رآه المؤمنين حسنا مسلمون حسنا فهو عند الله حسن ما رآه سيئا فهو عند الله سيئ. If the Muslims see something to be good, then it must be good by Allah. And if all the Muslims see something to be bad, then it must be bad by Allah. وإجماع هذه الأمة بعدما توفي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في فروع الدين حجة قطعية موجبة للعمل. Therefore, the ijma' of this ummah after the passing of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, during the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ijma' would not be considered a hujjah, because if Rasulullah is there, either he'll approve it, in which case it's taqreer, or he'll speak against it. So if they all agreed on something, that would not be a hujjah. There's no room, there's no possibility of ijma', because it would always be overruled by hadith. But after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, ijma' is a hujjah. Fi furu'id din. Furu'ud din excludes aqa'id, because aqa'id are known as usulud din. So furu'ud din excludes aqa'id. In aqa'id, ijma' is not sufficient. Hujjatun qat'iyyatun. It is a qat'i hujjah, a definite proof. Mujibatun lil amal, which necessitates action or practice. So we must practice upon it. والمعتبر في هذا الباب إجماع أهل الرأي والاجتهاد. Like we mentioned earlier, that the only type of ijma' which is considerable in this discussion is the ijma' and agreement of people of opinion and ijtihad, people who have understanding of fiqh. فلا يعتبر بقول العوام. Therefore, the saying of a lay person will not be considered. والمتكلم, and a scholar of ilm al-kalam, okay, scholar of aqidah, والمحدث, and a scholar of hadith, even though they may be very well versed in their fields, but because they are not experts in the field of fiqh, we won't consider what they say. فإنه لا بصيرة لهم في أصول الدين, because they do not have insight in matters of deen. By deen over here means fiqh. مراتب الإجماع. والإجماع على 4 مراتب. So even though ijma' is a hujjah, but some ijma' are stronger than others. Okay, and so therefore this difference is now relative. There are different types of ijma' in the sense that The first one is stronger, and the second one is less, the third one is less, but they are all hujjah nevertheless. So number one, إجماع الصحابة رضي الله عنهم على حكم الحادثة نصا كإجماعهم على خلافة أبي بكر رضي الله تعالى عنه. For all the Sahaba to agree upon the ruling of a certain case, نصا explicitly, clearly, like كإجماعهم على خلافة أبي بكر رضي الله تعالى عنه, like the إجماع upon the خلافة أبو بكر رضي الله عنه. The one is إجماع سكوتي, where a few people say something and the remaining don't object to it. So the fact they never objected means they must have agreed. This is the second type. But the first type is no, where they all clearly showed their agreement. For example, the Khilafat of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. All the Sahaba not only agreed with it, but they clearly pledged their allegiance and made bay'ah, gave bay'ah to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So this is the strongest form of ijma', that they all clearly agreed. حكمه هو قطعي بمنزلة آية من كتاب الله تعالى فيكفر جاحده. This type of ijma' is qat'i. It has the same status as a verse from the Kitab of Allah Ta'ala, from the Quran, and therefore one who denies it will be considered a kafir. Number two, إجماع الصحابة بنص البعض وسكوت الباقين, where the Sahaba agree on something, where some, with a explicit statement from some, and silence from the remainder. ويقال له الإجماع السكوتي. This is known as إجماع السكوتي. كإجماعهم على قتال مانع الزكاة في عهد أبي بكر رضي الله تعالى عنه. Like their agreement upon fighting those who refused to pay zakah in the time of Abu Bakr رضي الله تعالى عنه. The details can be found in books of hadith, that when Rasulullah passed away, some people said, we won't pay the zakah to Abu Bakr. We used to give it to Rasulullah, we won't give it to you. Okay. Some of them may have intended that it's a private matter, we'll pay it ourselves, how we feel, and some may have refused it outright, Allahu A'lam. But nevertheless, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu made the decision to fight them. And initially, Umar radiallahu anhu was not in agreement, but then later he agreed as well. So then all the Sahaba agreed. Nobody opposed this decision. Okay, and don't think that, oh, because he was the Khalifa, nobody had. Because the Sahaba were, when it came to matters of haqq, they were brave. Even when Umar radiallahu anhu stood on the minbar, and an Arabi, a Bedouin, get up and object to him. When he was wearing, on one occasion, he distributed some types of clothing that came, and everybody got one sheet. And Umar radiallahu anhu was wearing two sheets at the same time. Somebody stood up. Umar, you gave us one each, and you got two for yourself? So Umar said to his son, Abdullah, stand up. Where's your sheet? Abdullah says, Father, I lent it to you. He says, see, I only took one for myself, and I gave one to my son, but he allowed me to borrow his. That's why I'm wearing two of this type of sheet. So, if a lay person, a general member of public, who's not even a dweller of the city, who was a Bedouin, could stand up to Umar radiallahu anhu. So if the Sahaba saw something wrong, they would immediately object. They would never, لا يخافون في الله لومة لائم is their description. They didn't, when it came to matters of Allah, they didn't fear anyone. So, as Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu made this decision, and the Sahaba may not have explicitly agreed with it, but they didn't object either. So this is إجماع سكوتي, that they all agreed. حكمه هو قطعي أيضا ولا يكفر جاحده. This type of ijma' is also qat'i, but if somebody denies it, we will not consider them to be kafir. We may consider them as mubtadi', fasiq, sinful, but not kafir. Number three, إجماع من بعدهم فيما لم يوجد فيه قول السلف. Ijma' of those after the Sahaba, so tabi'in, atba'u tabi'in, in such a matter where there is no opinion found from the Salaf. So there's a new issue, an issue which never occurred before. Nowadays, every day we're hearing of new masail, new issues coming up. So as technology advances, so as the world changes, as situations change, people change, new issues come up. So there's an issue which was never discussed before. But then all the ulama of one time agree on one ruling, that this is the ruling for it. then this is also a type of ijma, but is not as strong as the ijma of the Sahaba. حكمه هو بمنزلة الخبر المشهور. It is in the same status as الخبر المشهور. يفيد الطمأنينة دون القياس. دون اليقين. That it gives the benefit of satisfactory knowledge, but not knowledge of certainty. And then number 4, إجماعهم على أحد أقوال السلف. For them to agree upon one of the opinions of the Salaf. Meaning we have an issue which was previously differed upon. There are many masail where the Sahaba had some ikhtilaf. Okay? Like al-ma'u min al-ma' and some other issues. Wudu mimma masatun nar. I think Imam Ahmad has a difference in there. But certain masail of wudu and ghusl, the Sahaba had differences. But later on, the Aimma Arba'a and the Fuqaha all had agreed on one matter. So that is now ijma'. So هو بمنزلة خبر الواحد. This is like خبر الواحد. يوجب العلم دون عمل دون العلم. It necessitates practice, not knowledge. ويكون مقدما على القياس كخبر الواحد, and it will be preferred over قياس, just like a خبر الواحد is. So in short, just like we had different types of ahadith, mutawatir, mashhur, and khabar wahid. Okay, mutawatir was the strongest, where we must act upon it and believe in it, or a person who denies it will be considered kafir. Mashhur, a person who denies it will be considered fasiq, but not kafir. But we still have to believe it and act upon it. And khabar wahid, where amal is lazim, but not ilm, meaning aqaid cannot be established with khabar wahid. Okay, with mashhur and mutawatir, aqaid can be established because they necessitate amal and ilm. But with khabar wahid, aqaid will not be established because they only necessitate amal and not ilm. In the same way, ijma' has these 4 stages. Ijma' of Sahaba explicitly, ijma' of Sahaba tacitly, sukuti, and then ijma' after the Sahaba on an issue which was never disagreed upon before, which was never discussed before, sorry. And then finally, ijma' after the Sahaba on an issue which was previously disagreed upon. So the first is the strongest, and then the second, then the third, then the fourth. But nevertheless, if all the mujtahideen of the ummah agree on a matter, then that is ijma' and that is a hujjah. This must be acted upon. So alhamdulillah, we've completed the second and third types of hujjah in this lesson. And inshallah, we will start the discussion of qiyas in the next lesson. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.